Greg, I have told people, I've said it on television, I tweeted about it, that your book, I think, is the most important one I've read.
Right.
Because, and I said this to you, it's written for the jury, not the judges. And by that I mean it's written so that ordinary people can make sense out of all that's happened. Help me frame for our audience, what is it that a lot of Americans need to know about this entire episode?
You know, what I found amazing is that James Comey, then FBI director, wrote a long statement that Hillary Clinton had committed crimes. In fact, he wrote down gross negligence, which is right out of the felony statute, not once but twice. But he and his confederates at the FBI wanted to clear her anyway. So they had Peter Strzok, top investigator at the FBI, sit down at his computer several weeks before Hillary Clinton was even interviewed. And he sanitized the findings of Comey's statement by expunging the incriminating words. And then Comey stands in front of television cameras on July 5th, 2016, and he clears her in what was the most legally preposterous explanation I've ever heard. But most Americans didn't know, at that same moment in a building in London, his FBI is meeting with the British spy, Christopher Steele, who had composed this completely fabricated anti-Trump dossier. And armed with that document, they were off to the races. That was their insurance policy to make sure Donald Trump did not get elected. And when that failed, they doubled down to try to undo the election results.
I mean, this was happening the same day that he's making this comment, and in London, they're meeting. Greg, one thing that I think a lot of people, especially in light of what's happened this week, the Manafort case, the Cohen case, the David Pecker the story, I don't think he's said this, but Wall Street Journal is reporting that the publisher of the National Enquirer is now going to maybe sing like a canary with whatever it is he may have. What significance does that play in all of this? What does that do in unraveling what's going on?
Well, I don't think it's going to unravel a lot legally, maybe politically, but you and anybody running for office can spend all of their money if they want. There are no limits. So if the money came from Donald Trump to pay out to people in exchange for a non-disclosure agreement, which is legal and very common, there's no campaign finance violation. And moreover, not everything that benefits a candidate is a campaign expense. If there's another purpose, a dual purpose or a secondary purpose, it's not even a campaign expense. For example, if he did it for personal and commercial reasons as well as to benefit his campaign, doesn't count as a campaign expense, and thus it's not a violation of the law. But if you listen to the mainstream media, they have all but convicted Donald Trump in the court of public opinion. Just the other day, there was a study, an instant study, that 222 times in the course of 18 hours when the Cohen story broke, CNN and MSNBC used the word impeachment.
And I think a lot of Americans, supporters of Trump, say, look, this seems to be so one-sided. Opponents of Trump are thinking this is the greatest thing that ever happened. You know, we didn't beat him at the election, so we're just going to criminalize him, and we're going to go after him in every way. There's two sides of this whole process of the Russian hoax, and I think you do a great job of laying out the parallel. One is all that's happening to the president before he was president and since. The other is how, and I don't want to belabor the Hillary Clinton part of this, but she apparently got away with some things that you wouldn't get away with, I wouldn't get away with, and not a single member of this audience would have gotten away with.
That's right. She had 110 classified documents on her unauthorized, unsecured email server. They were classified when they were sent and received. So that should have been 110 felony charges against her. And the FBI knew this. The evidence was overwhelming and it was compelling. And yet Comey stood there in front of cameras and said, no reasonable prosecutor would bring this case. He had just brought the same case against a young man, Brian Nishimura, just a few months earlier for doing just a fraction of what Hillary Clinton did, and others as well. And I go through the book and explain who they were, and they were prosecuted. But there's a different set of laws and rules for Hillary Clinton. She can break the law with impunity and get away with it.
Point blank, is there corruption at the highest levels in the Department of Justice and in the FBI?
Absolutely. It's a cesspool of corruption. I happen to think that the hardworking, honorable, and honest men and women of the FBI, the ones in the various field offices, the ones who really do all the work, are angry. And I've talked to many of them. They're very angry.
Do they feel betrayed?
Yes, of what James Comey and Peter Strzok and Lisa Page and Andrew McCabe and the whole gang did. They breached the country's trust in them and besmirched the good name and reputation of those hard-working rank-and-file FBI agents.
But I have to also ask you, when this FISA warrant, which is the basis of all of this was put before a FISA judge, does he not maybe feel a little bit sucker punched that somebody put stuff in front of him that was paid for by $9 million of the Clinton campaign? It was a fabricated document that did not have basis in fact.
There were a succession of judges that were on the FISA court that were deceived and lied to. They didn't disclose the fact that the document it came from, the Christopher Steele dossier, was unverified in violation of the law. They didn't disclose that Hillary Clinton was paying for it in the Democratic National Committee. That was buried in a cryptic footnote, footnote number 8, it's in the book. And my wife, when she read that chapter, said, "Are you kidding me? You'd have to be clairvoyant and telepathic to be able to figure this out." That was a fraud on the court. And it was also, as I explain in the book, 6 different felonies by all of the people who signed off on those FISA warrants, vouching that it was real and authentic when it was a lie.
Well, I want to just tell you, the Russia hoax, it's on the bestseller list now for 3 weeks. #1 on the bestseller list, not just on the list, #1, for a reason. It's a phenomenal book. And if you don't understand all this stuff that's going on, I'm just going to tell you, even if you think Hillary is wonderful and Trump is horrible, read the book, The Russia Hoax, Gregg Jarrett. This is a book that will help explain more, and I've known no one who's done a better job of putting it together.